Okay, so now let's talk about the history of Auburn prison system. Auburn State Prison is located in Auburn, New York, opened in 1816. It established a disciplinary and administrative system based on the silence, corporal punishment, and congregate group labor. In architectures and routine, Auburn became the model for prisons throughout the United States. So this means that Auburn prison system adopted the corporal punishment or through group labor in which this is their kind of discipline. Auburn system is located in Auburn, New York, and it opened in 1816, in the year 1816. In the early 19th century, many Americans believed that industrialization and dramatic demographic, economic, and political upheavals had conspired against the traditional controls of family, church, and community. So from their perspective, these moral guardians could no longer adequately control disorders or the social disorder, and so they believed that the punishment or the result of crimes is because of the social chaos. So they believe or they have found out that a structured environment in which the deviants could be separated from the disorder of society and the contagion of one another. So the Auburn State Prison believes that because of social chaos, thus the community, the government, the family, and the church can no longer hold this social disorder, and so they created this Auburn prison system, and through this they will create a new structured environment in which the convicted criminals or convicted individuals will be put there, and they will be away from a disorder of the society, and this is a way of reforming those convicted criminals. So their solution was to create a penitentiary, a new institution for reforming offenders and ultimately restoring social stability. So this is what I have discussed, that this Auburn system has its term penitentiary, in which they aim to reform the offenders and ultimately return them into social stability. So as what they have observed, since the society can no longer handle the chaos of the society or the disorder of the society, so they will have this penitentiary institution in which they will reform those individuals who are convicted or who have committed different crimes. So Auburn originally congregate cells in 1821. Warden William Britton borrowed the concept of solitary cells from the so-called Pennsylvania system. So Britton designed a unique 5-tiered cell block of 2 rows of single cells placed back to back in the center of the building. So this leader or this Warden William Britton adopted the model of the Pennsylvania. He also borrowed or he used the system of Pennsylvania in reforming or in making those institutions to be like the Pennsylvania in order to reform those convicted individuals. So the cells measured 3.5 feet wide, 7.5 feet long, and 7 feet high. So the doors are faced outer walls and in line with grated windows that provide indirect light and air. So as we have discussed before about the Pennsylvania system, it was a room for penitentiary in which the individuals who was being incarcerated there will be given the chance to be penitent or are not allowed to show even the lights outside, and there will only be windows for the air to come in, but they are not allowed to seek or to peek outside or what's outside, because the purpose of this is to give them enough time to be penitent and to reform their attitudes or to be penitent of what they have done. So the Auburn implemented a 3-level classification system. So this 3 classification system was used to those inmates who have done different offenders, and these classifications are used depending on the offense they have made. So the first offense, or the first classification for minor offenders, are they are asked to work in workshops and then return to their cells at night, while the second was to the serious offenders are alternated their days to confine and of course to work. And the last was the most hardened criminals were placed in solitary confinement and not allowed to go out and work. So this means that from the three classifications, from minor, serious, and to the most hardened criminals, are are based accordingly to their to how they act in the inside the institution. So those who have minor offense are allowed to work, allowed to go out from their cells, and then go back to their cells at night. While the second, or the minor offender, are um, allowed but alternated their days in coming out and in working. And those who have most hardened, or those who are most hardened criminals, are not allowed to go out, and they are just um, staying in their cells all day. So this, but as the time passed by, numerous suicides and mental serious illnesses, and the attempted of escapes have been discovered because of this classification. So the governor of the New York terminated this classification system and the experiment in solitary confinement. So in continuation about the solitary confinement, subsequently all male inmates are worked in congregate shops day by day, returning to individual cells at night. These are those, as what I have mentioned earlier, are those who have committed not that serious offense, or just a minor offense. So females who are first incarcerated or first convicted during the 1825 of Auburn State Prison were relegated to an attic and excluded from work and exercise. So men are only allowed to work on the day, and for those who have minor offenses during this time, especially those men are just allowed to go out and work, while females are excluded and they are not allowed to work and do some exercises. So, to ensure that the inmates did not corrupt one another, the Britain successor Elma Lins enforced a quasi-military kind of discipline in which the inmates are asked to shave their heads and wear the striped clothing, who will march silently in lockstep formation to and from their cells for meals and work assignments. So aside from walking and or running out of their cells after or before they are called for meals and work assignments, the inmates are asked to shave their heads and wear striped clothing as part of their uniform and walk to and from the cells. So aside from clothing and the shaving of their head and the for lockstep formation as they walk, inmates are not also allowed to have letters received from their families, and the only visitor allowed in the institution was the occasional visitor was the chaplain only. So they are not allowed to receive letters from their families, and they are not allowed to have visitors. So that is the kind of discipline in which Elma Lins enforced while inside the Auburn system. And this by the way, this Auburn system was the model prison used in America because of its kind of discipline and the discipline inside the inmates and inside the institution of the inmates. So this was used as the modern prison because it only used group labor punishment. Okay, so the Auburn prison system was meant to rehabilitate prisoners through discipline and hard work. So they were forced to make tools, clothing, furniture, or constructing roads and buildings. So this prison system was very good because it enables discipline and hard work, in which it can also help the society or the community. So which the prison used the money for profit. So the money that they have used, or the um since they have created a lot of furnitures, construction, or constructing roads, um making clothing and tools, so the money that they will earn from this will be made as their profit, so they can also the community can also still benefit from this kind of discipline. This system also forced them to dress in stereotypical prison uniform, the gray uniform with horizontal line. So this is the quasi military discipline that I have mentioned earlier, that is enforced by Elma Lins. This was the gray uniform with horizontal stripes, and during most of the day, the prisoners were kept in groups, and they had to march in certain formation, the lockstep formation. So this is what I have mentioned earlier, that if they will go out to their cells, they will form a lockstep formation, and they will march. The lockstep involve inmates linking arms with a person in front of them and casting their eyes down. So as you can imagine, they are bowing down or casting their eyes down while linking their arms in the person in front of them while marching, wearing those stripes uniforms. So at night, they were placed in solitary confinement. So after the work or in the morning, if they were go out, they will do that lockstep formation and wear the striped gray horizontal uniform. And then at night, they will be uh, placed in their solitary confinement, or in their individual cells. The major distinction of Auburn system was the enforcement of silence at all times. So to avoid any other noise while marching, so this quasi-military discipline was used. So they will cast their eyes down, were holding or linking their arms in front of the person, which are their co-inmates, and they were marched to proceeding to their meals and work assignments. So this will enable silence at all times, and this Auburn system enforce silence at all times. So, but then eventually, overcrowding made the silent system unenforceable, because of the growing numbers of criminals or convicted criminals. They cannot, or the administrators of the Auburn system can no longer manage silent within this institution, and Auburn system of discipline deteriorated into corrupt and lax routine of harsh punishment. So as time passed by and the overcrowding of the prison system develop, so they can no longer enforce the silent system, and lax routines of harsh punishments have developed as well. So after the Civil War, the spirit of reform withered, and contract labor was no longer profitable. So after the Civil War, the reform had gone, or as time passed by, the reform had gone and it was not practiced anymore, and then the contract labor had no longer profitable. So this means that the discipline was inconsistent, that it turns out to be something very pessimistic compared to the recent reformation of the Auburn system. So despite the demise of the ideal system, Auburn remained the model for nearly a century, primarily because it had been inexpensive to construct and maintain. So since despite of the ideal system, since this Auburn prison system was the ideal, and of course became the model for the American institution or the American penal system, it had, because of its inexpensive to construct and maintain. So this is because the Auburn system was made by those convicted criminals themselves, and because it is also profitable in the sense that those criminals or convicted criminals are asked to work, in which they can also earn profits from their hard work or from their labor. So as time passed by, it was not maintained. That's the reason why it was not or diminished. The term ideal prison was diminished as time passed by. Summarize the topic about the Auburn prison system. It was opened in 1817, and it started to cater or house inmates on the year 1825. So the Auburn prison system in New York City was built with a new model in mind. It is used to congregate, which meant that the inmates worked and ate together but went into isolation at night. So the inmates are isolated from different cells at night, and though they are separated from different cells, but they are allowed to eat together with their inmates. And the inmates engage in hard labor and work on bridges, quarries, and other difficult, tedious work. So the Auburn prison system owes many attributes such as better food, healthcare, and an increased emphasis on rehabilitation to the Pennsylvania system. So the Auburn prison system was the ideal prison for the American penal system this because of its many attributes such as better food and health care for those inmates, and they are well disciplined, though the kind of punishment that they are given or they give to the convicted criminals are hard work, but this kind of discipline enables the government to have profit from the work of the prisoners or the inmates. So silence was the overriding theme of the Auburn prison system. So as what I have discussed earlier about these silence and how they enforce this quasi-military discipline in which they emphasize silence inside the institutional correction. So John D. Cray, a deputy warden at the Auburn prison system, said silence took away the prisoners' sense of self, which made them more obedient. So because of this silent system, John D. Cray, the warden of the Auburn prison system, believed that the silence removed the inmates' sense of self, in which they would um, make them more obedient. Just because as what we have observed, if a person is very talkative, then he or she is more likely to do whatever he wanna do. So or he wanted to do. So by this they have observed, so they enforce this silent system in order for the inmates to be obedient, and since they are dealing with punishment that deals with hard work, so obedience is a must inside the institution. So the prisoners did everything without talking. The congregate system had them together for many activities and meals, and all of which are done in silence. At night they were in their cells alone. So the administrator of this Auburn prison system really emphasized the silence or the essence of silence. So they do their work in silence, and all the activities done inside the institutional system was done in silence, in eating and especially in working with their work assignments. And at night they are placed in separate cells alone. So that would give them time to be penitent and to reform. Then, despite the silence, the inmates worked together as they made items like barrels, buckets, clothes, tools, and shoes, boots, like that, and saddles. So, since they are since this Auburn system developed this kind of punishment in which inmates are asked to do hard labor, so the administrator of this Auburn system enable inmates to do their work in silence. So they will be doing all the activities like making clothes, boots, and any other tools in silence, though they are working in group, but they are not allowed to talk to each other. So that is how strict, that is the kind of discipline the Auburn system has. So the prisoner's sense of self was also diminished by the uniform, which consisted of white with broad horizontal stripes. When they move anywhere, they had to walk locksteps with their hands grabbing side of the prisoner in front of their elbows at their sides, covering the hands of the prisoners behind. If one stumbled, many would fall and later be flogged. So this really emphasized, and this kind of discipline is very unique since the prisoners are not allowed to go anywhere unless they are with their inmates together. So they were walk in lockstep together, and they were holding hands with their eyes casting down. So if imagine if one would fall, then the others who follow behind will also be flogged. So this is a very unique kind of discipline in which you will really um, gain the essence of unity, especially in walking and in dealing with your co-inmates. So that is how the Auburn system is being implemented.